Okay, good morning, everyone. So, as Emily said, my name's Simon Mather. I'm part of the technical team here at LPPA. Some of you might recognise me already, as I was previously part of the employer engagement team. I moved across to technical last September, so I've been in this role for just over a year now. So, in terms of what we do, ensuring LPPA complies with regulations and protects the interests of members is really important. The technical team is key to this, as they ensure that everyone at LPPA works within the scheme regulations. We deal with internal queries from our operational teams on how to interpret and apply regulations and guidance in specific cases, but we also advise the business on regulatory changes. So if any procedures or correspondence or website changes are needed, we provide general updates each month to the business through our technical meetings. We also work closely with clients and with the LGA, who provide guidance to schemes and their administrators. I've been asked to join you today just to give an update on some of the regulatory changes that we're currently working on. I've picked out a few topics which I'm hoping might be of interest to you. Some things that you might have heard about already in your involvement with pensions or through the media. Some things might be new to you. Okay, so I'm going to start with the big one. So McCloud. We're currently working on this project, and we have been certainly for the last 2 or 3 years. You might have heard the name already. You might have also heard it referred to as the age discrimination remedy. So just to give you some background, when the government reformed public service pension schemes in 2014 and 2015, they introduced protections for older members. So public service pension schemes include civil service, NHS, judges, armed forces, firefighters, police, and of course, the LGPS. Now, in December 2018, the Court of Appeal ruled that younger members of the judges and firefighters pension schemes had been discriminated against because of the protections didn't apply to them. So generally, the protections were intended to protect members who were usually within 10 years of retirement, to ensure that they didn't lose out by the schemes changing. As I say, the Court of Appeal ruled that that was discriminatory. So that ruling is called the McCloud judgment, after the name of the member of the judicial pension scheme that was involved in the case. Because of that ruling, all public service pension schemes that provided protections, including the LGPS, have been changed. So these changes are called the McCloud remedy. They remove the age discrimination found in the McCloud remedy court case. So in 2014, when the LGPS changed from a final salary scheme, so that's a pension scheme that's based on the pay when you leave, to a career average scheme, which is a pension which builds up based on what you earn each year. Older members who were closer to retirement, so that's generally within 10 years of retirement when the reforms were introduced, were protected from the changes. When a protected member took the pension from the career average scheme was compared with the pension that they would have built up if they'd remained in the final salary scheme. And then the member received the higher amount. So whichever was better, that's the figure that the member would receive. And that protection is called the underpin. So to remove the McCloud age discrimination, qualifying younger members will now receive underpin protection as well. So underpin protection only applies to pension built up in the remedy period. So that's between the 1st of April 2014, when the scheme changed, and the 31st of March 2022. Underpin protection stopped earlier. So if someone left the scheme or reached the final salary normal retirement age, which is usually 65, before the 31st of March 22, then that's when the underpin calculation would stop for those members. From the 1st of April 2022, there is no underpin protection. So that was the cut-off date. So any pension built up after this date is based purely on career average scheme. Members are protected by the underpin if they were a member of the LGPS or another public service pension scheme before the 1st of April 2012, and a member of the LGPS at any time between the 1st of April 2014 and the 31st of March 2022, provided they didn't have what's called a disqualifying gap. and that's a continuous period of more than 5 years where they were not in a public service scheme. Okay, so what's the difference between a final salary and a care scheme? So in the final salary scheme, as the name suggests, your benefits are calculated using your full-time equivalent pay in the final 365 days of service in most cases. We caveat it with in most cases because there are certain protections if people have had a reduction in pay, such as the best of the last 3 years. The accrual rate in the final salary scheme prior to it changing was 1/60th of your final pay for each year of service, and that would be prorated for members who were part-time. And the normal pension age in the final salary scheme, up to the point when it changed, was age 65. So when it changed to a career average scheme, benefits were then calculated based on the actual pay the member receives rather than the final pay. The accrual rate in the care scheme is 1/49, or for members of the 50/50 section, it's 1/98. The pension account, so that's the 49s, the way that they build up, is then revalued each year in line with the consumer price index. And another change that came in when we moved to the care scheme was that the normal pension age was aligned to the member's state pension age, with a minimum of 65. So just in terms of the accrual rate, so just to sort of explain, the way that I normally describe it is if you think of a cake and you cut it into pieces. So if you cut your cake into 60 pieces, each piece would be smaller than if you cut it into 49 pieces. So effectively, when we moved from the final salary scheme, the accrual rate actually improved. Now, final salary schemes are often considered to be the most beneficial. That's the general perception, but they do tend to favour those with long service, and in particular those who've gained promotions or salary increases later in the career. This is because your final salary benefits are calculated based on your final year of membership in most cases, although as I mentioned before, there are sometimes protections that apply for members who've had reductions in pay. Career average schemes are designed to be just as generous to members, but the benefits are spread more equally across the individual's membership of the scheme. So they can actually be more beneficial for lower paid workers, people who've taken career breaks, and those whose earnings don't rise as sharply towards the end of their working life. Benefits can also be more simple to calculate as they're just based on your pensionable earnings rather than a full-time equivalent salary. As I mentioned, although there was the improvement in the accrual rate when we moved across to the care scheme, that in some cases is offset by the fact that the normal pension age was changed from 65 to state pension age to generally reflect the fact that people are living longer. Okay, so what needs to be done? So when a member who's protected by the underpin takes the pension administrator will compare the career average pension that they've built up in the remedy period with the notional pension that they would have built up in the final salary scheme. If the final salary pension would have been higher, then the difference is added to the member's pension. The LGPS regulations changed from the 1st of October because of the McCloud remedy. So the changes are backdated to the 1st of April when the care scheme started. If members qualify for underpin protection, they will be protected even if they've already left the scheme or taken the pension. The McCloud remedy means two key changes for members. So qualifying younger members are now protected by the underpin too. So that removes the age discrimination that was identified in the McCloud judgment. The new underpin rules are also much more detailed. So the underpin, so that's just to ensure that the underpin works fairly and consistently for all protected members. So for example, underpin protection also needs to be taken into account when we're calculating survivors' benefits, death benefits, transfers out, cash equivalent values for divorce purposes, trivial commutations and small pots as well. So the new underpin rules are very complex and they will affect a large number of members. So each pension fund has to review all the pensions it's paying out to work out which ones will increase. Although the changes came into force on the 1st of October this year, it'll take each pension fund some time to review all the pensions that we're paying. The underpin check will take into account differences in the scheme structures. So obviously, as I mentioned, the change in the normal pension age is different. It'll also reflect any age adjustment if members have taken the pension early or late. Got some key dates here. So the key message to all members at this stage is you do not need to do anything. If someone qualifies for underpin protection, then we will work out if the pension is due to increase when they take it. Active or deferred members will get an estimate of how the underpin might affect the pension in their 2025 benefit statement. Appreciate that's some time off yet, but you know we are working to a timeline. If we're already paying someone's pension, we will review it. If they're due an increase, then we'll pay it to them along with any arrears and interest. We'll do that as soon as we can now that the 1st of October has passed. We've got thousands of pensions to review, so the process is going to take many months to complete. The Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities have put together an initial policy on how to prioritise cases affected by the McCloud remedy, although it's not been completely finalised yet. Initially, there'll be 3 priority groups, with Group 1 being retirees, deaths, Tier 2 uplifts and transfers out, taking place on or after the 1st of October 2023. Group 2 will be pensions already in payment as at the 1st of October 2023, and any events which took place prior to this date. And then the 3rd group will be any cases outside that group. So, for example, members who are in scope but are still active or deferred. The current state of play. So the new rules will mean a significant amount of work for everyone involved, employers, administering authorities, and of course, pension administrators. So additional data about hours worked and service breaks is needed to calculate the underpin calculation. So that data is needed for all members of the LGPS from the date the scheme changed to the care scheme in April 2014 through to the 31st of March, the cut-off date, or obviously earlier than that date if someone left active membership of the scheme or reached their normal pension age before that date. The collection of this historical data is known as the McCloud data collection exercise. So you may already have had contact from your pension fund, just asking if you have provided hours change information during the remedy period, and if not, you know, an exercise will be required to collect that information. Certain calculations that we run for protected members will include the underpin calculation. So we're working with our software provider to make the relevant updates to our systems. And obviously, once the updates are made, the functionality will need testing before it can go live. So that's all happening behind the scenes. There is an awful lot of work going on. We are expecting that the functionality will be in place early next year. Not quite sure exactly when, but it is likely to be sort of in the 1st quarter of next year. The LGA, so the Local Government Association, their communications working group, which is a collaborative forum that meets quarterly, that's made up of representatives from across different administering authorities. They've invested an awful lot of time and effort into considering what communications are needed as part of the remedy and what they should look like. That's mainly to ensure that there's a consistent message across the LGPS. So obviously the LGPS is locally administered, but what's really important is that the message is the same to all members, regardless of which fund they belong to. They've recently supplied template paragraphs which can be added to existing letters to inform members that protection has been taken into account when we've run the calculation. There's also been changes to the national LGPS member website, including videos, step-by-step guides for members to help them determine if they'll be affected by remedy. There's a member fact sheet with key dates and information. They're all really useful resources, and I would recommend that if members of your own staff are coming to you asking for questions about remedy, what they need to do, I would signpost them to the LGPS national member website, because it is really useful, the resources that are on there. There is also updates on the LPPA website. So we've updated the McCloud area of our website. That can be accessed from the main homepage. There's some common FAQs on there, but then it does link through to the national LGPS website. There's also something called a disclosure requirement. So the October 2023 changes constitute a material change to basic scheme information under disclosure regulations. So as such, administering authorities must give information about the changes to all people whose rights or prospective rights may be affected. That needs to be done within 3 months of the change. So it needs to be done, the change came in on the 1st of October, so within 3 months of that date. Communications working group have supplied wording that can be used to satisfy the disclosure requirements, and we're in the process of contacting members in line with that requirement. Okay, so just thought it might be useful just to give you a couple of examples of how the remedy might look to different members. So after the 1st of April 2008, the accrual rate in the final salary scheme was 1/60th of the member's final salary for each year of membership. So when we're running underpin calculations, we'll assume that members had remained in the final salary scheme with a 1/60th accrual rate for the remedy period. In the care scheme, the accrual rate is 1/49th of the member's pensionable pay. So we'll run that comparison based on the final salary benefits, what they would have been, against what the care benefits are. All things being equal, most members will be better off as a result of the improved accrual rate in the care scheme. So in this example, this member was made redundant in 2017, so that was during the remedy period. Because he was over the age of 55 at the time, his pension was paid straight away and it wasn't reduced for early payment. He's protected by the underpin. So in 2024, his pension fund reviews the pension he's built up during the remedy period. The comparison shows that his care pension benefits were worth £1,400 a year. If he'd remained in the final salary scheme on that 1/60th accrual rate, his final salary benefits for the remedy period up to his date of leaving would have been £1,200 a year. So the outcome is that Martin is better off with the pension that he would have got, that he's getting through the care scheme, than what he would have got in the final salary scheme if that had continued until his date of leaving. So we've run the underpin calculation. In this case, Martin's pension doesn't change because we've identified he's not worse off as a result of moving into the care scheme. Got another example here. One thing to bear in mind is obviously that when as I've mentioned before, when we moved to the care scheme, the normal pension age changed to the member's state pension age, whereas previously in the final salary scheme, it was age 65. So in this example, this member left at age 55. At that point in time, so because she was leaving earlier, pension was subject to reductions. That point in time, the underpin calculation shows that a career average pension benefits were worth £5,700 a year, whereas if she'd remained in the final salary scheme, a final salary benefits would have been worth £5,300 a year. So in that case, the career average pension is higher. However, because the member's taking the pension straight away, it was reduced because she was paid early. So what we need to look at is the fact that the reductions would have been applied over a shorter period had she remained in the final salary scheme. So that's showing that the reduction would have been lower. And in this case, the member would have been better off as a result of remaining in the final salary scheme. So that difference of £100 a year that's been identified through the underpin calculation is added to the member's pension. It's backdated and it would be paid to her with interest. She doesn't need to do anything to claim that money. We would just contact her to let her know that she's entitled to an enhancement. We anticipate that only around 5% of members will actually be better off as a result of the underpin. The ones who are likely to benefit the most are those who've had significant promotion or pay increase later in the career, or those where early retirement reductions that would apply to the care benefits outweigh the higher accrual rate, as is the case in this example. Okay, so just in terms of next steps, so the implementation of the McCloud remedy is likely to be by far the largest project for LPPA to deliver this year. The impact on LGPS is far less than it is for our fire and police clients. So the remedy is being applied very differently for fire and police schemes, in that members are actually being rolled back into the final salary scheme for the remedy period, whereas with the LGPS, people are remaining in the care scheme, but we're just running an underpin calculation when they leave, or retrospectively if they've already in receipt of the pension. As I've said before, most members won't be impacted by the remedy, as the pension they've built up in the care scheme will be higher than what they would have been had they remained in the final salary scheme. The ones most likely to be impacted are those who've benefited from a substantial pay increase during the remedy period. From an administrative point of view, LPPA have to review all our members who qualify for the underpin, regardless of whether they're receiving the pension now or not. Another thing just to consider is that by revisiting all LGPS members who've accessed the benefits from 2014, we'd have to pay out any underpin benefits with interest. We'd also have to rectify any tax implications. So, for example, where a change of benefit in the amount of benefits the member's receiving might impact their annual allowance or the lifetime allowance calculations as well. Okay, so that was everything I was going to cover on McCloud. So I hope that's been a bit of a useful insight. So the next item that I've got on my list to cover is pension dashboards. So again, this is something that's on our radar at the moment. It's something that it is quite high profile in the industry. So I just thought I'd cover a little bit about what they are, what it's going to look like, and sort of where we are and what happens next. So pension dashboards will enable individuals to access the pension information online securely and all in one place, thereby supporting better planning for retirement. Dashboards will provide clear and simple information about an individual's multiple pension savings, including the state pension. It will also help them reconnect with any lost pension pots that they might have. So obviously during people's working lives, they can work for many different companies. It's quite easy to lose track of any old pensions that you might have, particularly if you've changed jobs frequently. There'll be a non-commercial dashboard, which is run by the Money and Pensions Service, but there'll also be commercial dashboards run by qualifying pension dashboard services. So that could be organisations such as insurance companies, banks, etc. To make dashboards work, multiple parties and technical services need to be connected to what's called an ecosystem. So the ecosystem encompasses dashboards, data providers, interfaces, and there's a central digital architecture that will work behind the scenes. The ecosystem doesn't hold personal information supplied by users, but it does act as like a giant switchboard, so that'll connect all the users to the pensions via the dashboard. So what do we expect the dashboard to look like? So this slide gives an example of what the dashboard is expected to look like and what information it will show. So in this example, this member's got 4 pensions. So she's got a state pension, and she's also got company pensions with Aon, Royal London and Phoenix. So as you can see, it shows what they're worth and what she could expect to receive monthly from each one. At the top of the screen, there's a total, which shows what a total monthly or annual income would be. It also confirms the normal pension age for the member at the top of the screen as well. So it's a really useful tool. It'll enable members to see at a glance what income they can expect to receive in retirement. That'll help with forward planning, and it might prompt individuals to think about whether they need to be saving more. For public service pensions, it's expected that it'll just show the monthly figure, so there won't be a cash equivalent value to show like there are with the defined contribution pensions. It's not going to be real-time information, so it's just going to be a snapshot based on the information that was supplied to the member in the last annual benefit statement. So it won't change sort of daily or even monthly. It'll be updated based on what data is provided in the ABS. What's going to happen behind the scenes to make dashboards happen? So the Pensions Dashboard Programme is part of the Money and Pensions Service, MAPS. It's creating the underlying digital architecture for pension dashboards. Pension Dashboard Programme are working with the government, pension schemes, dashboard providers, and the pensions regulator to make this all happen. Pension Dashboard Regulations 2022 set out a law that connection and maintenance of connection is a legal requirement for registered pension schemes and for public service pension schemes. Initially, connection dates were set out in the regulations. Public service pension schemes were originally scheduled to connect in September 2024, so that would have been next year. However, in March of this year, the programme was reset. So this was to allow time to make sure the resources are in place to complete delivery of dashboards and support schemes with meeting the connection deadlines. As you can probably see, there's an awful lot going on in pensions at the moment, particularly with the McCloud project. So that's one of the reasons why the project around pension dashboards got put back. The regulations have been changed to provide all the pension schemes in scope with a new connection deadline, and all schemes must connect to the deadline no later than the 31st of October 2026. So although that seems quite a long way away, staging dates will be set out in guidance, which is due to be published by Money and Advice and Pension Service. Although no timescales have been provided as to when we can expect this guidance, we are, hoping it will be available. We're expecting it will be available in Q1 of next year. So despite the programme reset, and I know 2026 seems quite a long way away yet, it's important that schemes continue with the preparations to connect. So that's why PDP and the pensions regulator are raising awareness of dashboards, and why we're likely to hear more and more about them over the next couple of years. So there's a lot of work going on and significant amount of work still to do to comply with dashboard duties. And LPPA are engaging with individual LGPS funds and also with our integrated service provider, our ISP, to assess the impact of the changes and plan how we'll meet our dashboard duties. The internet service provider, that's our software provider who will provide the platform to plug us into the dashboard ecosystem. So data requirements. So just to touch on the data requirements. So data for dashboards will have to conform to a new standard, which is currently being developed, but there will be a real focus around accuracy. So all parties will need to be confident that the member data held is accurate and complete, particularly in relation to data items you would expect to perform to data match against. So, for example, things like surname, initials, national insurance number, date of birth. So any issues or concerns could lead to increased enquiries once we connected to the dashboard. Fortunately, as we now receive monthly data returns from employers, that'll ensure data is current and enable us to produce matches for new joiners, for example. Ahead of connection to the dashboard ecosystem, it's important that data updates, such as changes of address, unprocessed leavers, etc., are all cleared. Otherwise, they could give false results when a match is returned, and that's then likely to generate member queries. Providers need to hold pension records digitally so that they can be digitally matched against returns to be displayed on the dashboard. Implementing dashboards does not generally require schemes to hold any new information for the defined benefit element, though it will require us to hold new information for AVCs, where the AVC provider sends value data to LGPS administrator for us to display on the dashboard as part of that information, as opposed to the AVC provider producing like standalone data on the dashboard themselves. We can't stress enough that data quality is imperative. If a member only receives a partial match, then the provider will only have a limited amount of time to run the relevant checks and either provide the information to the dashboard for the member to view or inform the member that they don't hold any pension with us. Yeah, so I did have I was going to show a slide, and I've not put it in there, which would have just explained sort of how what the pension ecosystem looks like, but I'll just briefly talk you through it. So essentially what would happen is the member will log on to the dashboard through whichever chosen provider they choose to use, whether it be the Money and Pension Service one or one through one of their own pension providers. That will then send a prompt through the system to all the relevant pension providers that member holds pensions with. So this ecosystem will hold data around all, it will connect everyone to all the relevant pension schemes that members are part of, provided there's a data match. So if there's only a partial match, so if something looks incorrect, so say the surname is different because someone's changed the name, or if there's a digit wrong on the national insurance number, it might flag up what's called a partial match. So that'll tell the member that we think you might also hold LGPS benefits with the London Borough of Brent. That's administered with LPPA, and it'll give contact details for them to get in touch and find out, if they definitely do hold pension benefits with us or not. At that point, like I say, we will then have a limited amount of time to look into that and confirm back to the member. So that's why it's really important that any changes in data are sent through and that we update them at this end as well to minimise the risk of partial matches. Okay, so that was everything on pension dashboards. I've just got a couple of other regulatory updates. I'm not going to spend too long on these, but I just thought that they might be things that you've heard of. So I just thought I would touch on them. And the things that are on our radar that we will be working on and we might need you to get involved in over the coming months. And so the next one is the general code of practice. So although the pensions regulator remit in relation to public service pension schemes is narrower than it is for private schemes, since the reforms in the Public Services Pensions Act of 2023, the TPR does have regulatory oversight for public service pensions, as well as being responsible for setting governance and administration standards. The Pensions Act 2004 gives the pensions regulator power to issue codes of practice in relation to public service pension schemes. So the new long-awaited general code will consolidate 10 existing codes of practice into one new web-based code. And that includes Code 14, which is governance and administration of public service pension schemes. I say long awaited because this is something that we've been expecting for almost 2 years now. We have been informed that we were expecting that it would definitely be laid by the end of this year. As yet, that still hasn't happened, and I appreciate we are running out of time now. But it's something that we are told is imminent. So the TPR's corporate plan, which goes up to 2024, has 5 key priorities. So security for pension savers, value for money for pension savers, scrutiny of decision making. So decisions made on behalf of savers are in their best interests. So that could be things like, investment decisions and so on. Embracing innovation to meet savers' needs, and bold and effective regulation. So there's some of the things that we think that the TPR's attention is likely to focus on. The new code of practice will introduce new pension scheme governance responsibilities, puts a lot of the onus on local pension boards for oversight and governance of the schemes. LGPS funds will need to identify the required changes to their current processes, check current policies and procedures are fit for purpose, and implement any changes where necessary on the back of the new code of practice. So that's likely to involve working with scheme employers to ensure that they understand their obligations, in particular around providing accurate and timely data and so on. Just something else to touch on. This isn't something else that we've been expecting in regulation for some time now. We feel it's likely that it might come in the next set of amendment regulations. This is around widowers' benefits. So the Goodwin Amendment to Widowers' Benefits, it's already been introduced in Scotland. So like I say, we're expecting in the next set of amendment regulations for it to be introduced in England and Wales as well. This relates to the Goodwin Tribunal case. So it was a Mrs. Goodwin versus the Department of Education. And it was identified that male survivors of opposite sex marriages and civil partnerships are treated less favourably than survivors in same-sex marriages and civil partnerships. So current survivor benefits to widows, so that's male survivors in opposite-sex marriages, are only based on the female spouse's service from the 6th of April 1988 onwards, whereas same-sex survivors were originally entitled to survivor benefits from 1988 onwards as well. But following another court case in the name of Walker in 2017, LGPS regulations were amended so that survivors' benefits now take into account the member's service from 6th of April 1978. So following the Goodwin Tribunal, regulatory amendments now need to be made with effect from the same date to extend that entitlement to male survivors of female partners as well. Changes to the local government scheme have been announced to address that discrimination, and amendment regulations were introduced in Scotland to ensure greater equality across all relationships. They were made in April 2022 and they've been backdated to 2005. As yet, no changes have been made to the LGPS in England and Wales. As I said before, that it is expected that is on the horizon, and that'll be introduced in the next set of amendment regulations. That could then require corrective action and retrospective review of cases. So that could be quite a bit of work coming our way once that comes in. Just another one which I thought might impact employers. So the Pensions Extension of Automatic Enrolment Bill. This was granted royal assent after passing its 3rd reading in the House of Lords recently. The new Act makes provision for the extension of automatic enrolment by reducing the age at which workers are automatically enrolled from 22 to 18 and removing the lower qualifying earnings threshold so that contributions would be calculated from the first pound earned. So that will require regulations to be implemented to bring the changes into effect. So in March, the Pensions Minister stated that the government would like to launch a consultation on the implementation approach. And that's like, well, we were expecting the consultation to be launched in autumn. So as you're aware, in the contractual enrolment applies in the local government pension scheme. So that means that all eligible employers under the age of 75 are contractually enrolled into the LGPS, unless the contract of enrolment is less than 3 months. So employees with a contract of employment that is less than 3 months would fall under automatic enrolment criteria as an eligible job holder. So currently that's provided that they are between the age of 22 and state pension age, and that their annualised earnings are £10,000 or more per year. Automatic enrolment sits alongside contractual enrolment, so employers still have a duty to monitor the workforce and auto-enrol anyone who meets the auto-enrolment criteria but isn't eligible for contractual enrolment, or also members that have opted out. So basically, they're contractually enrolled if they're required to do so. Otherwise, an auto-enrolment applies, and people must be auto-enrolled every 3 years if they opt out. So it's auto-enrolment that will be impacted by the regulation changes brought about by this Act. There is just one other thing that I just thought it might be worthy of a mention of. So I haven't included it in the slides because it only happened yesterday, but this is a bit of a stop press. But following the Chancellor's autumn statement, Pot for Life has been announced. So that will require employers to contribute to a member's pension scheme wherever individuals change jobs. So that could result in an obligation to accept transfers, possibly more than the 12-month window that exists at the moment, or it could even lead to automatic transfers. So in the same way as we have auto aggregation between LGPS funds, if someone moves to a different fund or changes jobs, as always, the devil will be in the details, so we don't know. But as a technical team, these are the kind of things that we have to be aware of. And obviously, as more information comes forward in the coming weeks and months, that will be something that we will pick up and advise the business on what we need to do. So I just thought I would finish just with a few facts and figures. So last month, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities published its annual summary of LGPS funds in England and Wales for the year end that covered 2022 to 23. So that was the year ending 31st of March this year. The headline figure is that the total market value of LGPS funds, so across England and Wales, as at the 31st of March, was £357.2 billion. Total expenditure was approximately 15.2 billion, of which 12.2 billion counted for retirement benefits, 0.9 billion transfers out, investment management expenses 1.7 billion, and admin and governance costs 0.3 billion. Total income into the scheme was approximately 17.3 billion pounds, comprising of 8.4 billion in employer contributions, 2.8 billion in employee contributions, 5 billion pounds from investment income, and 0.9 billion from transfers in. And as at the 31st of March this year, the total number of employees participating in the scheme was 19,085, while total membership of the scheme stood at 6.2 million people. So that's more than 10% of the population of England and Wales. So some really big numbers there, but it just shows that the LGPS is the largest of all the public sector pension schemes in this country. Okay, so that was everything from me. So thank you very much for listening. I'll hand you back to Emily now, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the session.